NFL draft is in the books. We have a very special guest coming up. He's Dave Wannstedt, the former Bears head coach, now an NFL analyst for NBC Sports Chicago, 670 The Score. He also does great work for the Big Ten Network. Dave will join us in about 20, 25 minutes or so. But first, we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs. And as we sit down to record our new episode on an early Thursday evening, breaking news from Adrian Wojnarowski. Mike Budenholzer has been fired as head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Breaking news just happened a couple of minutes ago. And Stacey, we speculated on our show last week that he could be in trouble based on the Bucks' playoff failures the last couple of years. And they obviously didn't waste any time in making this move. We learned of the tragic death of Mike's brother during that playoff loss to the Miami Heat. And, you know, the season's a long way off, but they obviously decided, let's make the move now and start planning for next season.
Well, there's been a lot of disappointment in Milwaukee since they won the championship. There's been a lot of early exits, a lot of disappointing, especially when they had the number one team this season to go out the way they did against a team that was fighting for the playoff life in the Miami Heat, who were coming in the playoff game, the play-in game. It's frustrating, and it's really tough about this time because he lost his brother during that series, and it's really a bad time, but this is a business. It happens to everybody. Nick Nurse won a championship not too long ago, and he ended up getting let go. And, now he's probably one of the hottest free agents out there. Does Milwaukee say, hey, look, you know what? We're not in a hurry to make a decision now. Let's see what happens after the playoffs are set, and maybe there's a coach that we didn't think was available. And then you still always can go back to Nick Nurse, and he's probably doing the same thing, just waiting to see what's out there.
The Bucks had the oldest roster in the NBA this year, and Brook Lopez will be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Chris Middleton has a player option for this summer. He might opt in because, Stacey, I think it's like $41 million. I don't know if he's going to find that anywhere else on the open market.
Especially coming off injuries. He's been injured the last few years, and he was injured going into this series. So I think he's going to bet on himself and go ahead and take that $41 million.
That $41 million will set him up pretty nicely for his future and future generations of the Middleton family. There's no question about it. But obviously, you see the Bucks all the time. The Bulls play him 4 times a year during the regular season. Giannis is fantastic, but did you see some chinks around the armor? Because the Bulls did beat him twice the first 2 times they played him this year.
Well, I mean, listen. The Bulls had their number this year. Let's just be honest. The Bulls played them really well. They played them really well in that playoff series last year, and could have easily been 2-0 in Milwaukee, and then that could have been a totally different series. But we also live in a world would have, could have, should have. They went on, did what they had to do, and they ended up losing the second round without Middleton to Boston. As you said, Mark, they're old, but they still have a team that can challenge for a title. Maybe it's time for a new voice. Maybe a guy like Nick Nurse sees an opportunity here saying, wait a minute, I got one of the greatest players on the planet right now. I didn't have this in Toronto, except for Kawhi Leonard.
And when he did, he won a title with Kawhi.
I won a title with Kawhi, but I only had him for a few months. Now I got an opportunity to be with this guy for a few years until he's a free agent. But of course they've got to get rid of some guys. You got to find somebody. I'm not a big Grayson Allen fan, not just because he did what he did to our guy Caruso. Right. I just don't think you can start him. I think you've got to find someone that you can. They really miss a guy like Brogdon. Brogdon, what he's done, 6th man of the year in Boston, and what he's done in Boston, could have been doing that in Milwaukee if they could have afforded him. He's that good of a player. He can play multiple positions. He's a good defender. He's a great 3-point shooter, and he's made a huge difference in Boston. I mean, came off the bench last night, and they destroyed Philadelphia. Yeah. They got up 43s, and it didn't seem like they were missing.
What do you think about the Eastern playoffs right now? Both of them look like they're going to be competitive at 1-1. Jimmy was hurt. Jimmy Butler missed Game 2 of the Knicks Heat series. How do you handicap those 2 series?
Well, Miami had an opportunity to go up 2-0, and down the stretch is where you needed Jimmy Butler. You needed a player like Jimmy Butler to carry you through and get you through that last 4 or 5 minutes of that game. He wasn't there. Then they kind of give them credit though. They battled for 3.5 quarters. They were right there. They had an opportunity to win the game. They made some shots. Strus played really well for them. Bam did a good job. They just needed that closer. And so if Gimme comes back and he's healthy, they have 5 days off after that game. They had 5 days off. I don't know how in the heck you had 5 days off in a playoff series when everybody else is playing every other day. But he's got 5 days to rest that ankle. Yeah. So he missed that game, set out 5 days after that. So he should be fine going back in there. Now, Philadelphia, I don't know. If Embiid's not healthy,
he had a big leg brace on the other night.
He doesn't look like he should be out there, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor, but I did sleep in a Holiday Inn last night, and he shouldn't be out there. He's not 100%. And I know he's the MVP, he won the MVP, and there's pressure. And what Doc Rivers, and I'm not ever going to second guess a coach, but I am going to second guess it. You already got game one. Just sit him out for game two, because you already accomplished what you set out to do. All we were trying to do is get a split. We're not trying to go 2-0. If he's healthy, we push it for 2-0. But he's not healthy. Sit him out that game. Give him some more rest. Let him get back with the energy of the Philadelphia crowd. Get his MVP award. And maybe he revs it up and plays through whatever injury, his knee, and gives you the spark that you need. You already 1-1. You did a good job getting that first game, and James Harden played out of his mind. Just go ahead and roll the dice and say, let's go ahead and see, like Miami did. Miami set their star. They said Gimme. They said, hey, let's sit him. Let's rest him. His ankles, he could probably play if this was game 7, but let's sit him 5 days off, and then we'll come back and we'll reevaluate.
Well, we both know Tibbs very well, and I'm sure he would say in his famous, we got more than enough to win.
We got more than enough to win.
But Julius Randle played in game 2, and he was not moving well at all. He looks like he's really struggling with that ankle.
Yeah, he's not 100%, but no one's 100% right now, Mark. Yeah. This is what the playoffs are all about. This is where if you get paid the big money, this is where you need to show up, whether you're 100% or not. This is where Michael showed up. This is where Kobe Bryant showed up. This is where Larry Bird showed up. This is where your superstar players. This is why the superstar players get paid the way they do. We need you to show up when it matters the most. So, he's going to have to find a way to gut it through. New York, I'm telling you, man, I wasn't really impressed with them so far in this series. The first game they had the lead at halftime. They came back in the third quarter and laid an egg. They barely beat basically the second unit, the mass unit of Miami. Again, you don't have Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, or Victor Oladipo. So you're losing 3 rotational players and a superstar player at that, and you barely beat them. So that's got to be a little concerning with Tom Thibodeau right now, because it seems like, it's I'm going to take my turn, you take your turn, I'm going to take my turn, and you can't beat good teams that way.
They got to get more from R.J. Barrett, because he hasn't done much offensively in this series. And you look around, if Julius Randle is just floating on the perimeter shooting threes, he's not really helping him all that much. So really it relies on Jalen Brunson to make outside shots, get in the paint and set up his teammates. You got Mitchell Robinson, who's a non-scorer. Some of the guys they bring off their bench aren't going to give him anything on offense. So it's going to be tough for them in this series, I think, to come up with enough points to be able to win 4 games against Miami.
You know what? But Miami is a team that's not going to outscore you either. So this might be one of those games, those typical 90s, early 2000 games where you're looking at an 85 to 90s in that score range right there. If Miami's hitting 3-point shots, it could easily be 120.
Right.
But if they're not hitting threes, then it's one of those slugfest type of games where New York can tend to play a little bit more because they have the guys that can get to the foul line. R.J. Barrett drives to the basket all the time, gets fouls. Jalen Brunson can get fouls. Then it kind of favors, New York if it's that, a knockout, drag-out type of fight. And, that gives them an opportunity and really, really puts them in position to win that kind of game.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. That's going to be a very grinded-out type of series, and Tom Thibodeau is ideally suited for that type of battle. Before we get to the West Conference semifinals, let's talk about something that happened in the first round. Dillon Brooks poked the bear. LeBron taught him a lesson on keep your mouth shut, son. And then the Memphis Grizzlies followed that up with a haymaker saying, even though you're a free agent, we have no intention under any circumstances of bringing you back. That's some pretty strong stuff, Stacey.
Basically, if he was the last player on the planet and they needed one, they would just play without him.
Right.
You know what? Listen, and Shams reported that.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, that's really bad. They didn't have to do that. If you don't want to bring the guy back,
it's coming off the top rope.
Yeah, seriously, if you don't want to bring the guy back, don't bring him back.
Right.
Okay. The guy plays. Listen, he plays hard. He talks too much. But there's a lot of guys. There's the Ron Artest guys that used to do that. There's Lance Stevenson. Those guys always did that. He's no different than those guys. Yeah. Ron Artest could actually play though. He could actually play, but See, look at that. See, I ain't gonna lie, I had some fun with it too. I had some fun with the memes too. But they're making him out to be the scapegoat.
Yeah, it wasn't all his fault. They were missing their two bigs.
Listen, it's a different series if Steven Adams is playing there and then Brandon Clark is playing healthy. Yeah. It's a different series. They beat LA. Okay, John Morant, ever since he's come back from the gun situation, hasn't looked like himself.
Right.
Like he just didn't seem like he was his high flying self.
His right hand was banged up, which is tough.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he just didn't look like he had the energy to play, and it cost him. And they played a LA team, and Dillon Brooks. One thing you have to learn, man, as a player, you got to know who you can talk trash to and get into their head, and who you can't. And LeBron is one of those guys you can't get into his head. He's seen it all. When you're going up against Lance Stevenson, you're going up against Paul Pierce. Guys have been talking trash to him since he was 18 years old. He is mentally and physically tough. Nothing you can say can hurt him. The best thing for you to do is just play hard and hope he misses free throws. Because that's really, the kink in his armor when the game is tight, is missing free throws down the stretch. But as far as, talking trash, nah, it's not going to work, bro.
Well, because of the fact that he's damaged his reputation around the league with, some of his antics, on the court, Dillon Brooks is going to go into free agency. He may be looking at a deal somewhere around the mid-level exception instead of a big money contract. If you're the Bulls, would you be interested?
I'd take him in a second.
Okay.
Hell to the yes, I would take him
because he's a better shooter than he showed this last year.
Listen, the kid is a two-way player. Okay, he may not be the best shooter, but he's a bigger version of Patrick Beverley. I mean, Patrick Beverley's antics are worse than Dillon Brooks. I mean, if you really think about it, and I love Patrick, but he's the type of guy that if you're going into a street fight, you want him. You want guys like Patrick Beverley. You want guys like Ron Artest on your side. You don't want a guy that talks tough and then talks like a dog and barks, rah, 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 and then as soon as someone comes at him, meow, 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 they hide. I like the coach from, I don't know what coach he was from, Liberty, was like, I need dogs. I don't need a bunch of cats. Meow, meow. I don't need a bunch of cats. So give me dogs, and he's a dog, and he's a guy that can defend. He can defend his position, and he can knock down shots. I just think that he got himself so much into his own head after what he did backfired that, not talking to the media, that killed him. Yes, sir. He ain't going to China, man.
He's going to
go on somebody's team, man. The kid's 24, 25 years old. He can play multiple positions. Listen, he's one of those guys you hate when he's on someone else's team, okay? But I would take that kid in the second because he got dog in him. He plays hard. He competes. He talks trash, but on most nights he can back it up. On most nights he backs it up. It's just talking trash to LeBron James. Somebody should have pulled him to the side and say, hey, look, bro, okay, let's look at these videos of all these people who've fallen by the wayside talking trash to LeBron James. Okay?
Yeah, and people forget that, a couple of years ago, people were talking about Dillon Brooks as maybe the second best player on the Memphis Grizzlies team,
Yeah.
It's not like this is just some scrub.
No, I mean, the kid can play. I think people have blown it out of proportion with the trash talk. I ain't gonna lie. Like I said, I was clowning with the memes and stuff, but at the same time, it was funny because
he was an easy target.
He was an easy target when you open your mouth and you set yourself up to criticize someone else. Then you have to be respectful of what everybody's going to do to you. And so when you didn't do what you were supposed to do, everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and you saw some of the memes and stuff. Going to the door and it was locked. But that kid's going to get picked up by somebody. If I'm a playoff caliber team, if I'm the Bulls, if I can get him at a price that's affordable, I'm bringing him on this roster.
Yeah, just looking up his numbers. Last year, he averaged 14.3 points per game, but 2 seasons ago, he averaged 18 a game. The year before that, 17. So this is a guy that can score.
Yeah, so people are looking at his antics, and they're like, they're crucifying this kid. But if you look at his numbers and you look at his stats, the kid can play.
Right.
So if I'm Arturis and Mark and the guys in the front office, if I can make that deal happen as he's a free agent, if I can make that deal happen as long as it fits and it's affordable, I don't want to overpay for him because right now he's one of those players that nobody wants to touch right now because he's still hot.
Right.
But how would that be after the draft? How would that be later in the summer? He could be a guy that people want.
So the Lakers took advantage of an undermanned and dysfunctional Memphis team and advanced to the conference semifinals. Then they go into San Francisco. They win Game 1 against the Warriors. And all of a sudden, I don't know if you heard this chatter that Patrick Beverley, I think, had Russell Westbrook on his podcast, and they're both asking for rings if the Lakers win the title. So they're kind of looking a little bit far ahead, I think.
Come on now, stop it. You still playing the division? You're playing the world champions, okay? And let's be honest. I mean, Golden State had to turn around and play another game, within a day or so after beating
quick turnaround.
And an emotional series against Sacramento where they had to come back and they won 3 games in a row after being down 0-2, play without Draymond Green. It was an emotional roller coaster. And then having to play a Game 7 on the road and win that game just to get to the second round. So let's pump our brakes right now and everybody thinking the Lakers are just going to run through them because it's not going to happen. They're going to come out. It's a prideful bunch. They've been down before. They're going to come back. I thought they played extremely well. I think, what hurt them down the stretch was, Anthony Davis started playing like the number 1 player in the league.
He's been really good in these playoffs. This is what
people envision Anthony Davis 5 years ago, where he was going and what his ceiling was. It's clearly his team. LeBron is great, and LeBron's still doing LeBron things, but when AD plays like that, it's his team. I mean, you're getting 30-plus
30
points
and 20 in the
rebounds.
playoffs, yeah.
Come on, man. And he's blocking shots, too. He had Golden State so shook that they didn't even want to go to the basket because every time they went to the basket, it seemed like there was like 5 ADs there blocking shots. So, that's huge. When he plays that way, boy, they're tough to beat.
I still can't get over that trade at the deadline. It always mystifies me in any sport why bad teams decide they're going to help, the most powerful franchises. Why would Danny Ainge, who is a lifelong Boston Celtic, agree to that trade to help the Lakers? I mean, he gives them, in a 3-way deal, D'Angelo Russell. They get Vanderbilt, who was really making life miserable for Steph Curry in Game 1. And they get Beasley, a 3-point shooter off the bench, for like a future 2027 draft pick, which may not be worth shit anyway.
Well, let me tell you something, man. Danny Ainge might be a double agent. He fleeced Minnesota for Kevin Garnett and was able to get him for basically nothing with Kevin McHale. There was a little Boston Celtic. Hey, you help me, I help me later on. Okay, so they got that deal. Won him a championship, okay? Then he leaves, and now he's in Utah. Come on, he helped Brooklyn out. He traded the big 3 of Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to Brooklyn. He's always around these little shady deals, man. He's like that guy sitting in the corner you don't see, and then all of a sudden he comes out of the dark alley. Yeah. And he's already made the deal, and you're like, when did this go down? No one told us. He just came in and just stole it from you. So I don't know why everybody feels like they got to help the Lakers.
Because the Lakers were dead. They were 13th in the West. They were in danger of not even making the play-in. And then after this trade, plus they got Rui Hachimura from the Wizards, another inept franchise. And now all of a sudden they've got depth. They've got size. They could get to the finals.
Oh, man. I don't know, man. It's the LeBron James effect. Teams, it's like everybody wants to help LeBron win.
Yeah.
It's like, some of the trades that he brought out. When a team is dead in the water, let them die. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because, you're Utah. You have those players. Vanderbilt's a heck of a player. Yeah. That's a 3-and-D guy. I mean, that dude, the way he defended Steph Curry. And what people don't understand about Steph Curry, Mark, is he's like Reggie Miller. He's a guy that never stops moving. That's what makes it so hard to guard him, because he's constantly running through screens and picks and going here and going left, going right. And then all of a sudden he jacks a quick shot up and you're like, wow, how did he get that shot off? Because you're still trying to catch your breath from chasing him around for like 30 seconds or on the clock. But at the end of the day, the players that they received, I mean, you get a quality starting point guard in D'Angelo Russell who can play off the ball. That's the key thing. Most of these, like Russell Westbrook, cannot play off the ball. They went out and go get a guy that can play off the ball and then can play point guard when LeBron James goes off the bench. Vanderbilt is a 3-and-D guy. It gives them more length in that starting lineup with AD and LeBron and him. They cover up the whole floor defensively. Yeah. And then, your guards, they don't have to, the kid Reeves is getting ready to get paid $90 million. Like,
like Duncan Robinson.
Oh man, they're gonna regret that. I'm just, and that's my boy from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and now they bring Schroeder off the bench, and he can chase Steph Curry around.
And Schroeder looks like the old Schroeder that was trying to get that turned down that $80 million deal.
Yeah.
That's who he looks like. I mean, he looks really, really good.
I always like Schroeder.
Oh man, Schroeder's like crafty. Like, he's very crafty. And on a team like this where you got AD who demands the attention of the defense, you got LeBron demands the attention of the defense, those guys were able to move around freely because they're worried about the two bigs for Los Angeles. So you're getting easy shots. Schroeder's going to the basket, throwing little layups at the rim. I mean, there's no resistance for them right now.
Yeah, and the free throw disparity in game one.
And Draymond Green, stop. Listen, man. You know what? Draymond Green, stop being friends out there, man. You praised LeBron before you even got to the series. Then I read where he wanted to go see LeBron's game when he broke
Steve Kerr told him
Come
no.
on, man. And your mindset right now, it's like when you play your brother in a pickup game, Mark. You ain't trying to kill your brother.
Yeah.
You want to beat him. You want to show him that he can't beat you, but you ain't trying to kill him. But if you play your next door neighbor, you're going to destroy him. You're going to destroy him. You're going to knock him on the floor. You're going to talk trash to him. You're going to kill him. And LeBron and Draymond Green used to be like that with LeBron. And now it's like he's his best friend. I'm LeBron. I'm gonna play LeBron. Da 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 da. And you can see it out there in the playoff series. It's like, dude, you got to put that friendship to the side, bro, and concentrate on what's best for your team. You guys are trying to make history here. Yeah. You're trying to get your 5th title, in like 9 years. So you gotta focus, bro.
Well, Draymond's also looking at his exit strategy. He's got an option for this year. Maybe he's thinking he could jump on the Lakers if Golden State doesn't want him anymore.
Bye. Bye.
Hey, the one series we haven't talked about is the Phoenix-Denver series. Denver leads that 2-0, and they won both those games fairly easily. Kevin Durant was a little bit, I don't know if passive is the right word, but he wasn't super aggressive in looking for a shot. The series will shift to Phoenix, but now Chris Paul has another injury, a groin problem. Do you think Phoenix gets back in this series?
Is it me, or is it that Chris Paul seems like he misses every pivotal playoff series?
He's missed a lot of them.
Oh my goodness. It seems like he's always hurt in pivotal playoff series and misses 2 or 3 games in a series. It's over. It's over. Yeah. Because one, Phoenix doesn't have depth. That's a big problem. Ayton is not playing like he should play. When you move him off the bench, you're shorthanded at the center spot. You got to move Kevin Durant to a stretch 5. So they don't have quality depth. That's what happens when you go get a superstar player. They didn't have time to rebuild their bench. They didn't have time to go try to make a deal with Danny Ainge and say, let me get those 3 players on our team. They didn't have time for that. So now it's evident. I said from the very get-go about Denver. Denver was the team to beat. I don't know which show I said it, but I said Denver is going to be a tough out. They were number 1 team early in the season, and they went through that losing streak where the Bulls went in there and beat them. Yeah. And, they just couldn't find themselves. And then all of a sudden, Murray wakes up. Murray starts to feel better. His knee starts to look 100%. And when he is healthy, like he's playing right now, they are tough to beat. And the big fella, I don't care what nobody says. The big fella, he could have been right in there with that MVP voting.
Oh, there's no question
and
about
I think he's going to be motivated now to say, okay, so y'all didn't want to give me my 3rd one in a row? Okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you why they called me the Joker. Ain't nobody going to be laughing after this series is over.
And give credit to Denver's front office, a couple under-the-radar moves, bringing in KCP and Bruce Brown. Ooh. Those guys are similar to what Dillon Brooks is. They'll get in your face defensively, and they can make shots.
Key rotational players. Yeah. That's what these are the guys that are glue to championship caliber teams. You've got to get guys who are selfless, guys who are not out there trying to get theirs. KCP doesn't care if he scores 20, if he scores 9. Bruce Brown does all the dirty work. He's a younger PJ Brown. I mean, not PJ Brown, but PJ Tucker. He's a younger PJ Tucker. He does all the dirty work. He can get the ball off the glass, start your break for you. He can defend 1 through 5. He's a jack of all trades, and they don't care about their personal stats, and that's what you need when you want to win a championship.
And Bruce Brown is a competitor. He won't back down to anybody.
What will Brown do for you?
There you go.
Win!
We're going to switch the conversation to football in just a minute. Dave Wannstedt is our special guest. He's going to join us next. But first, I want to tell you about our good buddy, Jeff Vukovic. When it comes to insurance for your auto, home, and business, make sure you contact the king of insurance. That's nationwide agent Jeff Vukovic. You can reach him at jeffvuk.com, jeffvuk.com. Best jingle in the business going, Stacey.
Nationwide is on your side. Woo!
The weather has turned. We all got a lot of energy,
Yes,
excited
we do.
about seeing the sunshine here in the Chicago area. Well, we're going to talk some football. Dave Wannstedt next on episode 128 to Give Me the Hot Sauce. You know, there's never an off season in the NFL. The draft has just been completed. They're going to have rookie mini camps this week, and then OTAs, and then we'll get into mandatory mini camps. And our special guest, Dave Wannstedt, is very familiar with all of the clock that is the NFL life. Dave, thanks for joining us today. And I know that you were busy last week with all the NFL draft coverage. The Bears were able to make 10 draft picks over the 7 rounds. How do you think that Ryan Poles did with the haul that they brought in?
You know what? I like, first of all, good to be on with you guys. And, I like what Ryan did. Now, obviously, being a defensive guy, I would have loved to see him take a defensive guy with that first pick. But, I get it. I mean, the more that Darnell Wright, the guy that they took, the big offensive tackle from Tennessee, the more I've listened to him, seen him on interviews, the more he's grown on me. I really like him. I had him rated as my second best offensive lineman. I think he's an instant starter. And the one thing that's consistent with everything that Ryan Poles has done since he's been here, going all the way through free agency. I mean, he almost refused to sign an older veteran free agents. They were all guys that were 23, 24, 25 years old. He's kept it very young. And I think character and work ethic, has been a priority for every one of these picks. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. I like what he's doing. Then he loaded up with defense. 7 out of the 10 picks were defense. They need a lot of help on that defensive line, a lot of help. But he said afterwards, I know we can't do everything in one day. So, I think he's really got it figured out. And I'm a big fan. I'm supporting him all the way right now.
One of the things they talked about Darnell Wright being, because he played in the SEC and he played against, future first-round picks. He played against the Georgia first pick of last year's draft and Trayvon Walker and did a really good job against him. And then Will Anderson, who was in this year's draft. They were impressed with his athleticism. They were impressed with his, how big he is, but how athletic he is. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, you know what, Stacey? I give him a lot of credit because he could have left early. And he started 5 games as a freshman at Tennessee. And then he obviously played as a sophomore, junior, and senior. And he stayed all the way through. And I think when you see his interviews, that sense of maturity, that sense of confidence comes out. And when you watch him on tape, Tennessee did a lot of things where they pulled the tackles, and he's able to get out on space. He is not a 300-pounder that, I never thought 350-pound guys can play effectively. It's just the philosophy that I've always had. So he's a little over 300, but you see that in him. I'd rather have a guy be able to move a little bit more like he can as compared to a guy that might be bigger but a step slower. He played guard as a sophomore. He played left tackle as a junior, and then he played right tackle as a senior. So you got a guy that's got a lot of versatility too.
Dave, you mentioned that they got on day 2, they picked up a couple of defensive tackles and a corner who looks really interesting. He's from your old stomping grounds at the U of Miami, Tyreek Stevenson. He's got good size for a corner. You think he can come in right away and maybe move somebody inside to play the slot?
Well, yes, absolutely. He was one of my favorite picks in this draft, not just because, I'm a University of Miami guy, but because he's got that size. They like to play a lot of cover 2. You talk to people down there at Miami, he's a physical guy. He'll get your hands on you. And when you play that 2, as Stacey knows, you got to be able to roll up. You got to be able to bang on those wide receivers. He can do that. He's got sacks. He's got some tackles for loss. He's not afraid to hit. Coming from Miami, he's a tough guy. He's returned kickoffs. He's returned punts. And you mentioned moving somebody. Last year for the Bears, one of their corners, Kyler Gordon, he played corner, and then he went inside on the slot. He was back and forth, back and forth. So now what they can do, they can put Gordon inside on the slot. He's a little quicker, a little smaller, and now you can put Stevenson outside, and I think it brings a little bit more continuity to that secondary.
One of the things that it seemed like they addressed as well is try to put as many weapons around Justin Fields. You know, they look at the receiving core. I've heard where they said this is the best receiving core since like 2018, and even going back as far as 2013. Talk a little bit about the acquisition of DJ Moore and Claypool. What do you expect out of those guys this year?
Well, DJ Moore, I do a show on the Big Ten Network and have been for about 8 years now. And I remember him when he was at Maryland. And DJ Moore, he was, I don't want to say setting records, but he was playing at a high level when he was at Maryland. I mean, he was the guy down there. And now he goes to the NFL, and he's doing the same thing. So they got themselves a number. Everyone talks about the trade Ryan Poles made. Well, guess what? Yeah, you got a number 1 pick, but you also got, if they would draft DJ Moore at number 10 when they picked, and he came in and you knew he was going to be a starter, you're happy. Everybody should be excited about that pick. So, you got 2 starters right off the bat, bang, bang. And so they did that. They addressed the offensive line. They are truly giving Justin Fields an opportunity to be as good as he can be. I look for the offense, and I know that, talking to a couple of the coaches up there, last year they were kind of doing the heavy quarterback run, total quarterback move passes out of necessity. That's about what they had. So I look for now to be still the quarterback run's going to be a big package, but a little bit more of the Philadelphia Eagle blueprint with Jalen Hurts, where they're going to do the quarterback read, the RPO stuff, but they're also going to throw the ball from the pocket more. And this is probably going to be, I hate to say this, and people in Chicago are already talking about it. I mean, they got the 2 number 1 picks next year. Justin Fields better do it. Yes, on one hand, yes, that is a reality, but I hate having that kid think in the back of his mind, oh boy, this is it. If I don't do it, I'm out, so there's going to be a lot of pressure on him is what I'm saying. And I think he'll handle it okay, but I think the Bears have addressed the offense and they're giving him a chance to be successful. Now let me just say this. There's nothing better for a quarterback than have a defense that goes 3 and out, that has a defense that flips the field with sacks and turnovers and gives you easy field position. The Bears last year, they were the worst in the league in defense. I mean, Brisker, their strong safety, had 4 sacks. He was the leading sacker on your team. That's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed to even say it, but it's a fact. And so, yes, Justin Fields got weapons on offense. I just hope the defense can help him out a little bit. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, when Stacey was going in the Wayback Machine for receivers, I thought he was going to bring up Curtis Conway and Jeff Graham when you were coaching.
Well, I'll tell you what, Curtis Conway and Jeff Graham right now on the Bears would make an impact. Both those guys can play. That's
for sure. Hey, defense, they still have cap space, and there's some veterans out there, guys like Leonard Floyd and Jadeveon Clowney, guys that have rushed off the edge in the past. If you were the head coach of the Bears right now, would you be going into the GM's office and going, hey, you got to get me a defensive guy on the edge who can get after the quarterback?
Yeah, you'd like to have that, but I'll tell you what, Mark, and I hate to use the word blueprint, but the blueprint that they have used, Ryan Poles has used, is to keep it young. And I just don't know right now if they're willing to take a chance on he said this after the draft. Guys, we're not going to get it all solved in 1 year. It's going to take time. So with saying that and knowing the future picks that they have, the defense is going to have to be addressed. I just don't see them jumping out there and signing a veteran guy. I don't see that being kind of in their DNA as far as how they're putting this thing together.
Okay, so now Aaron Rodgers has decided to leave Green Bay. How excited should the Bears fans be now that he's gone? He's been a thorn in the Bears side since he's been there, and it was Brett Favre before him.
Don't bring up Brett Favre to Dave.
Hey, listen. Hey, sorry, Dave. Sorry. But who now becomes the favorite of the NFC North? I mean, is it? We know that the Lions have really made it a jump from last year. They played really well last year. Are they going to be able to maintain that? Then you got Minnesota. They bring back Kirk Cousins. I mean, who becomes the favorite now that Aaron Rodgers is gone?
You know what, Stacey? I think Detroit. I think Detroit had the best draft in our division. I really do. I mean, everybody's critical of their draft, but in my mind, they got 4 starters. Okay, they got 4 starters. They got the running back, obviously, the first pick from Alabama, but and then they got David Montgomery. So they got 2 backs, and David Montgomery, I think the Bears should have signed him back. I'm a David Montgomery fan. I think this guy's a heck of a football player. So now you got him playing in the division with a chip on his shoulder. And then they signed a linebacker, Jack Campbell out of Iowa, 6'5", 250. This guy was Defensive Player of the Year 2 years in a row at Iowa. He makes 100 tackles. He sacks the press. This guy is a player. They got the big tight end to take T.J. Hawkinson's place, and they steal Branch. They get the safety out of Alabama, Branch, in the 4th round. He'll be a starter. I mean, people had him in the 2nd round. So I got to say, who would be my favorite right now? I would say Detroit because of what they did last year, and they've added some good players to the mix.
Dave, let's talk about your coaching background. Everyone knows that you're great friends with Jimmy Johnson. You've been with him on the college and the professional level. Jimmy's an interesting character. Obviously, he's been successful on television, had great success as a head coach in college and the pros. Talk about your relationship with Jimmy and what influence he's been on your life.
Well, Jimmy, I guess you'd say he's kind of been like a big brother to me. I mean, we were assistant coaches together. That's how we met at the University of Pittsburgh. I had just got into coaching. I played at Pitt for Coach Johnny Majors. Tony Dorsett and I were teammates. And then I got out, and when my NFL career, was up at Green Bay, had surgery. I was going to go to Canada. Long story short, Coach Majors come to me, and I was his first captain at Pitt when he went back there, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I said I'm going to get into coaching eventually, and he says, well, I got a job open now, but I got to know in the next month. So I ended up getting into coaching, and don't you know, we win the national championship the next year, and he goes to Tennessee. Jackie Sherrill takes over, and Jimmy had got let go at Arkansas, and when Lou Holtz got the job, and Jimmy leaves Arkansas and comes to Pitt. So we're assistants together. And then 2 years into the Pittsburgh thing, he comes to me one day and says, hey, I'm going to get the Oklahoma State job. I want you to come with me. And I says, man, Oklahoma State, how you getting that? And he says, well, my roommate in college, he says, is real good friends with he's in the oil and gas business, and he's real good friends with all these oil type, big people in Oklahoma. He knows border regions guys. And I said, who is that? Jerry Jones? And he says, Jerry Jones. So Jerry kind of started with Jimmy after college with the Oklahoma State job. So we get down there, we win, not win. I mean, Oklahoma, I hate to say this, they were good coaches. They got good players in Nebraska with Tom Osborne. We were never going to be able to get to the top of the feeding line in that conference. So Jimmy went to Miami. I was actually at USC. I went to USC for 2 years, and we won the Rose Bowl. And then as soon as Jimmy got the Miami job, he called me up, and I left USC and came back to Miami with him. And then we go Miami, and then it's the Cowboys, and kind of the rest is history. So, and then I end up at Fox when I kind of wound up coaching. I was just talking to people around Chicago. Maybe I'll do some radio. I don't know. Maybe not. I didn't know what I was going to do. Maybe get back into coaching. And I auditioned. My agent knew a guy at the Big Ten office. So I auditioned up there, and Fox owns the Big Ten network, majority of it. So they sent my tape out to Fox in L.A., and then I called Jimmy and said, hey, this thing is kind of strange. They kind of like me down there, and I don't know. So he says, well, let me find out what's going on. So I go out to L.A. and audition, and And then I was with Fox for 9 years. And it was funny because every Sunday morning, I would do the early pregame show, and Jimmy and Bradshaw and them do the second one. But Jimmy and myself and Bradshaw, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, we meet in the green room, and we'd sit around. We'd sit around and talk about the college games. In fact, I'm sipping me a little Terry Bradshaw bourbon.
There you go, Coach. Drinking is encouraged on this show, so that's great.
Yeah, and so we talked last week. You know, we still talk. You know, I don't want to say every week, but pretty close to it. And you know, I got him on my radio show on The Score. He was nervous. I could tell he was answering the questions quick. And I said, "You going fishing today?" He says, "You know me. I got the boat loaded up." He says, "The beers are on ice." And the line, as soon as I hang up, I'm gone. I mean, he's crazy. He gets up at 4. He is on the water. He lives on the ocean in Isla Morada, and he's got his own docks in his backyard. It's crazy. And he is on the water fishing when the sun comes up.
Yeah,
and,
it's a great life.
That's kind of his deal. And the only thing that stops him every day is the wind. You know, if it's rough. But
yeah, he won't even fly into the studio to join the guys in the studio. He'll do the show remotely a lot. You know?
Oh yeah. He's done with that though. He's actually done with Fox.
Yeah,
he's officially retired. But yeah, we have we're not going to do it this year, but we've done it the last 3 years. He calls it his inner circle. And Tony Wise, our line coach, Norv Turner was our offensive coordinator, Butch Davis was the D-line coach, Troy Aikman, and then our PR director, and then our attorney. We all get together down at Jimmy's place and spend 3 days, and we go out on a boat. We tell the same damn story for 20 years, and we laughed. It's just as hard as when it happened and we talked about it the first time. So, you know, it's a lifelong relationship that's very unique in this business. And Jimmy was the guy. You know, we're talking draft. Think about this. Now, when we go to Dallas in '89. We made more trades. We made 51 trades in 5 years. And that was more trades than the entire National Football League made in that same amount of time.
He invented that draft scale card, right?
And he invented the draft scale card so he would have an idea of value for picks. And and there's so many stories. You know, a couple of them. I mean, one is, you know, we drafted Russell Maryland with the first pick, and then we took Alvin Harper with 18. We had 3 number ones, and then he wanted to get out of the 21st pick. So we're calling everybody who wants our pick. So finally, Wayne Fonts was at Detroit at the time.
Yep.
And Wayne says, we want that pick. And so Jimmy and Wayne have been friends for a long time. So they agree on what the compensation is going to be for the pick. And Wayne says, I just got to go and I got to get it okayed with Mr. Ford. I'll be right back. So now all of a sudden we're on the clock. Okay. And they're saying on TV, Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. So we go 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. No Wayne, no Wayne. So we're down to about 2.5 minutes. And we're trying to get a hold of Wayne Fonts. So finally Jimmy gets him. There's about 2 minutes to go and we're on the clock. And, you know, if you don't pick, you lose your pick. The next team goes. And Jimmy says, Wayne, and he says, I can't find Mr. Ford. And he says, but Jimmy, you got my word on this. We're set. We want this pick. You know what we're going to give you? We're locked in. And Jimmy, this is how smart. He says, who you want to pick? Who you going to draft? I'll draft the guy for you, and then we'll make the trade later. So if you look at the 1991 draft, I think it's pick 20 or 21, and it says Dallas Cowboys, and we drafted Calvin Pritchard, who was a defensive tackle for the Lions, and had a good career up there. And then we made the trade and got the picks, and they got Calvin Pritchard. I mean, you know, Jimmy was just a master when he was on the clock of being able to figure out a deal and do something.
Dave, you've always been known as one of the best defensive coordinators, especially when you were in Dallas and on those teams. A lot of people don't know that you were up for the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching job when Chuck Noll retired. It was between you and Bill Cowher, and you were one of the last guys. Talk a little bit about that experience, and were you bummed out a little bit going back because you played in Pittsburgh, and maybe you thought that would have been a good situation for you. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know what? I go up the night before and see Art Rooney, who's now the president. He went to Pitt. He was a year behind me at Pitt. And then Tom Donahue was the GM at the time, and I knew Tommy. So I knew I had two of the three decision makers. Unfortunately, Dan Rooney was the big one. Now, I had only been in the NFL 3 years. We were at Dallas. And at that time in the NFL, we were the outcast, right? We were the college guys. Jerry Jones was the maverick. Gimme was going to be the draft guru. We were going to, in everybody's mind, we were coming in to take over the NFL, and nobody liked it. Okay. So I'm up there in Pittsburgh, and I'm sitting around with some buddies having a beer the night before the interview, and they do a poll up on the thing. And I had, who's going to be the next coach? There were three of us, me, Bill, and somebody else. And I had like 80% of the fans in the streets of Pittsburgh. So I said, shit, I got this job. This is done. So I go in for the interview, and I'm feeling it was stupid. And I'm talking to Mr. Rooney, who is just unbelievable. And we're getting into Dallas, and I make some comment about America's team. And he leans back in his chair, and I said, oh, boy, this is not And he says, let me just give you a little lesson, Dave, because you know about America's team. And I think he said in 1976, we played the Dallas Cowboys, he says, in the Super Bowl, and we beat them. He says, and Pete Rozelle was the commissioner, and he called up my dad, and he said, they called him the chief, this big cigar all the time, and they called up the chief, and they said, Chief, we're making our highlight tape for this year's NFL, and we want to put you on the cover, and we want to label it America's Team. And Mr. Rooney looked at me, and he says, you know what my dad did? He took a puff of his cigar, and he says, we're not America's Team. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, wow.
And I went, oh, boy. And then so they called up Tex Schramm, who was running the Dallas Cowboys, and Gil Brandt, and they took the name America's Team, and they labeled, and they said, they lose to America's Team, or however they did it, and the Cowboys ever since have run with that. So that's the story behind that. Wow. But anyway, yeah. But Bill had Art Modell. Bill was coaching at Cleveland, and Marty Schottenheimer and Mr. Rooney were real close. Jimmy really didn't know Mr. Rooney at all. Jerry, at that time, we were, like I say, the outcast, and Art Modell. So, and Bill obviously did a great job. I mean, Bill and I are good friends. And then how about this? So then I take the Pitt job, 10 years later, and Bill's the coach of the Steelers, and we share a facility. So every day I'd go out on the field, and Bill and I would stand out there before practice and BS. And Mr. Rooney, I will say this, anytime that we needed anything done at Pitt, it's probably illegal, that with the Steelers, boom. Because we shared the practice fields. They still do. Steelers have two fields. Pitt has two fields. But you go out, they're on one side of the building, Pitt's on the other side. The cafeteria, everything is right there in one building, and it's all shared.
Wow.
Very unique.
So that didn't work out, and you end up becoming the hottest coordinator on the market after winning the Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys, and you wind up in Chicago succeeding Mike Ditka, which is a lot to ask. I mean, Ditka cast such an enormous shadow in Chicago, and I'm sure you found out very quickly that the specter of the '85 Bears could not be, you couldn't get away from it. I mean, that ghost was everywhere. What was that experience like for you, following, a legend in Chicago like Mike Ditka?
Well, I lived that legend at Dallas until we won a Super Bowl, because it was all Coach Landry, Roger Staubach teams. Yep. So I kind of, but Mike and I, a lot of people do, Mike and I are from the same hometown. His dad worked in the same steel mill on the other side of the river as my dad did, J&L Steel. Mike went to Pitt. I went to Pitt. I would go back when Mike would have charity golf tournaments, and I was coaching in college. He would have golf tournaments back in Pittsburgh, and to raise money for the area, and I would go back and play in it. So Mike and I had a long-time relationship, and I kind of knew what I was getting into here. I was very comfortable with Chicago, and no regrets whatsoever. But to this day, I didn't see Mike last year because we weren't in Naples much this year. But every year I go out and I see Mike out at his golf club, and we spend some time together. So we've been friends ever for a long, long time.
All right, Dave, last thing for me. I know you got to go. You mentioned Justin Fields earlier. You say there might be a lot of pressure on the young man this year with the Bears holding those 2 number 1 picks next season. From your perspective, your coaching analysis, what is your read on Justin Fields, and do you think he can be a successful NFL franchise-type quarterback?
I do. I think that they, let's go back 2 years ago, and Jalen Hurts. The Eagles had those 2 number 1 picks, and everybody was saying, well, they got those picks. I really, in the beginning of the year, I didn't think he'd survive the year, and I thought he would be put on the bench. And they put in a system that complemented him. They signed A.J. Brown, a big receiver, DJ Moore. They got the offensive line some help, and the rest is history. I think Justin Fields can be in the same situation. I mean, this kid, think about it, the receiving core we had last year, guys, it was really somewhat embarrassing. The offensive line was a bunch of young kids for the most part. And Justin would beat up. He had a separated shoulder. It's 10 degrees out. He's standing up at that podium. A big deal about being quarterback in Chicago is being able to deal with the pressure, with the media and the fans. He never once blinked. He proved that he is a tough guy, mentally and physically. And you combine that with his talent, I'm excited. I think the guy is going to have success. But again, you got to give him some help on defense. This cannot be. The Eagles, you look at the Eagles' defense. That was a huge, huge help for Justin Fields. When we won our first Super Bowl with Dallas, we had Emmett and Michael and Troy, but yet we had the number 1 defense in the NFL. You know what I mean? So you got to be able to put it all together, really, to have a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Otherwise, it's awful tough to do it just with one side or the other.
Well, hopefully great things in the future for Justin Fields and the Bears. Dave Wannstedt, our special guest on Gimme the Hot Sauce, episode 128. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. We're part of the Odyssey family with Mitch Rosen and the gang, so we look forward to hopefully having you on again as the season gets closer.
I'd love to. You just call. I'll jump on with you guys.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thank you.
Okay, man.
Great getting a chance to talk with Dave Wannstedt. Stacey, I did a show with him for a couple of years over at NBC Sports Chicago, and it was always tough to get him in the studio in time because everybody wanted to hear him tell stories. And he'd get into one of these Jimmy Johnson stories or his college experiences at Pitt and all the rest of this stuff, and people would just be all gathered around waiting for him to tell a tale.
I was impressed. I was like, man, Dave Wannstedt knows a lot about football.
Yeah.
And it was just really, it was cool sitting here listening to him tell stories. He had everything in detail.
Right.
And that's impressive, man.
Yeah, he didn't have the best rosters here, but he did the best he could with it. And he went to Miami, and he won 11 games a couple of seasons as head coach of the Dolphins. Just want to get a baseball note in here real quick. The Cubs really coming off a disastrous road trip. They went 1-6 against the Marlins and the Washington Nationals. So they're calling up their top prospect, Matt Mervis. Mash Mervis is coming up to Wrigley Field to play Friday against the Marlins. He hit 36 homers last year in the minor leagues. He's got this country strength, and they're hoping he's going to be a big deal for the Cubs.
Well, you know what? You knew it was a matter of time.
Yeah.
I probably sooner than they thought. Maybe they were looking at maybe coming in maybe after June and bringing him up.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely need something. They need something for the fans to get excited about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They started off pretty good, and then all of a sudden now the weather's starting to warm up, and they're getting cold.
Yeah, two Chicago teams going the opposite way. The White Sox had fallen to the bottom of the American League. Then they won 3 in a row. And then this afternoon, they lost an extra inning game to the Twins where they could have cut into the division lead. And that's been a kind of a strange situation, too. They finally get Tim Anderson back, but they've got a lot of ground to make up over the coming months.
Yeah, but I see them turning it around. They got the better players. I see them turning it around. The key to the White Sox, just like as the Bulls, is your main players have to stay healthy.
Right.
If your main players go down, like I said, I keep thinking someone has a voodoo doll of the White Sox and the Bulls, and we need to find out who it is. It might be Francisco, the double agent. Francisco, he might have the voodoo doll with his LL Cool J hat on. Going back to Cali. I don't think so.
And how about the Liam Hendriks story? Not only has he got a great bill of health, but he was throwing 97, 98 down in Arizona. He was back at Guaranteed Rate Field saying, just give me a few tune-up appearances. He could be back in a Major League uniform in a couple of weeks.
Great story.
Yeah.
Great story, man. I mean, it's so, as a fan, just awesome to see him back. I mean, considering where he was at and then where he's at now, that's awesome. And that's the inspiration for anybody. And I know his teammates are going to be inspired by him when he comes back full time. So congratulations to him. That's awesome in his family.
We wish him all the best. Hey, one of our favorite segments here on Gimme the Hot Sauce is to give you folks some tips on what you might want to check out, whether it's network TV, streaming services, what have you. It's sponsored by our good friends at Biggers Mazda. Their sizzling new Elgin location at Randall Road is the biggest Mazda store in Illinois. Biggers is offering a bottle of Stacey's signature hot sauce with first test drives of new or pre-owned vehicles. It's your choice. Everything from the coolest SUVs to the stunning Miata. So join the fun at 2100 Randall Road in Elgin at Biggers Mazda. Speaking of the hot sauce, Julasco, that's right on the right.
Baby. Yeah. They just ordered all their cases. They ordered almost 400 cases of the hot sauce, which will be on all their shelves, and we are off and running in probably a week. So we're excited about that.
Is that why Whispers isn't here? He's got to stock the shelves at Julasco?
Whispers is he's like, he's going out with he's going to a wedding.
Okay.
So he's going out to Vegas in a wedding. His buddy's getting married, and so that's where he's at right now.
So hopefully he'll have some stories to tell about being in Vegas.
Me.
He's been in Vegas a million times, right?
Trust me, he's going to be expecting like the Hangover movie. That's what it's going to be with him. He's going to end up being somewhere where he shouldn't be.
Right.
Walking around, running down the strip with no clothes on. Nobody wants to see that.
So while Whispers is away, make sure to place your order at GimmeTheHotSauce.com until the stores are fully stocked in Julasco stores in the state of Illinois. You can always get contact with us at GimmeTheHotSauce.com, and Tim will have somebody packing it up.
Someone will be packing
it.
Yeah. Somebody's got to pack it. It might be him and Christopher Walken.
So you got any recommendations on what are we watching this week?
Yes. Let me tell you something. I don't know how I've been sleeping on this show. My son told me about it. Said, Dad, you need to watch Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I've never watched it. I think I saw the first episode, and I was like, I'm not watching this because it was so hard to understand because they have such strong British accents.
Yeah.
So you sit there the whole time trying to decipher what they're saying. But as you watch the show, it becomes easier to understand what they're saying.
And they don't mess around.
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you something. America is not a children's show, okay?
No.
Just because you hear Peaky doesn't mean it's a little child show, okay?
Yeah.
The Peaky Blinders is, woo, man. It's like it's like set in like 40s, 40s.
I think it's even further back than that.
Yeah, oh, man. And then, they show this gang in England, how they come into power. Yeah. And the lead character, Tommy Shelby, is the lead character, and his whole family runs this business, and they're ruthless, man.
Yeah, Tommy doesn't mess around.
Hey, listen, Tommy Shelby does not mess around. That dude is. I've been binge watching it, and now I done caught up, and I'm telling you right now, man, that is a great show. I don't know how I was not hip to this, but Peaky Blinders, a must watch for you people.
Yeah, that's a great show. Yeah, I watched the whole thing, and Tommy's a great character.
Oh.
Speaking of Tommy, is Force coming back on soon? Power?
Yes, and you know what? Oh, America, you never sleep on the king, baby. The king always gets great guests. Tommy said he's going to come on the show.
Joseph Sikora?
Yeah, he's going to, because he's from Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's,
that'd be great.
I reached out to him. Tommy said he said we're gonna wait till the show comes back on full, when it starts, and then he'll come back on. He'll come on. And also been working. I got Michael Rappaport in the background coming. Oh, baby, I've been working hard behind the scenes.
Well, since we're talking about great guests coming up next week on Gimme the Hot Sauce, it'll be on our normal Thursday time around 5 o'clock Central Time. Stacey King's old coach, Phil Jackson, the Zen Master, is going to join us. I assume he's in Montana somewhere, so we're going to hook him up via Zoom.
He might be at Yellowstone with Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, yeah, we're waiting for that. Yeah.
He doesn't look like that anymore, though. That was when he was young Phil right there. That was like first-year Phil. It'll be interesting because there's a lot of hot topics with Phil. There'll be a lot of information. You hear about the championship teams. We'll be talking about the comparisons between the Lakers, the three-peat teams, and the Bulls. He's been in the news lately, so it'll be interesting to talk some of these things about with Phil.
So make your plans to join us. It's going to be fascinating to talk about Phil and those championship teams and what he's doing now, because Phil has kept a very low profile. So because it's Stacey's show, he's agreed to join us, and it's going to be a fascinating conversation, talk about all things NBA, although he did make some news recently saying he hasn't watched the NBA in a number of years.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, and listen, sometimes things can be taken out of context.
Exactly.
And there's no way in the world, listen, I'm a Phil Jackson supporter. There's no way in the world Phil Jackson is racist or, he's just not. Now, whatever was said about the bubble and he hasn't watched it, I read it. I believe some of that stuff was taken out of context, and I'm sure, and Phil's an educated guy. He knows how to handle himself in the press. I don't see that being what everybody thinks it is.
Right.
So, because there's no way in the world Phil could coach all these African-American players and feel certain ways about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I can't wait to ask him a story about your draft workout too.
He might not remember. he might deliberately not remember that one.
Regular listeners that give me the hot sauce know all about that, but we'll
go back, baby. Episode. I don't know what episode, but it's like one of the first episodes. Baby.
We'll chat with that about Phil and a whole lot of other things. So that's coming up next week on Give Me the Hot Sauce. And is Mike back? Are you driving here today?
Mike is currently in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, he's following Bruce.
He's chasing Bruce Springsteen around, and I'm pretty sure now Bruce Springsteen has his picture up on the concert wall saying, if you see this guy, be alert. He's following me all over the country. I met him in Tampa. I saw him in Tampa. I've seen him now in Dublin, Ireland. I'm probably see him in Spain. So please keep an eye on this guy here. So, Mike, this is you. I know you're listening right now, baby. I'm not Bruce Springsteen, but I'm pretty close to being a boss. Windy City Limousine provides championship service. Making a reservation is so easy, it's a slam dunk. Let Windy City break the full court pressure of traffic and get you to your destination in style and on time. Contact Windy at 847-916-9300. That is 847-916-9300, or go to WindyCityLimos.com.
We appreciate everybody who follows us on the live chat during our YouTube shows, and make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. We're hoping to increase our YouTube following, so make sure you make your presence known and hit the subscribe button so we can alert you to when the new episode and the great guests are coming up. I want to thank our shorthanded Sriracha crew. We got Nicky Knuckles and Cisco who've been doing everything, full services, and we want to send our best out to Maddie Keller, who's on the mend from mono. So we got to get her back.
She's quarantined. She's quarantined, and she's at home right now, so she'll probably be back next week. But shout out to Nick and shout out to Francisco.
Did a great job. Yeah,
having to take different roles today. Yeah. Different roles they're not used to doing. But again, it's like Tom Thibodeau says. Next man up.
Yeah, we got more than enough.
We got more than enough to do this show, and we did it. So congratulations to those two guys. Good job today, boys. Ran very smoothly.
So mark your calendars. Thursday. That'll be May 11th. Phil Jackson, 5 o'clock.
Michael!
So join us on YouTube.
Michael! Triangle!
Can't wait to hear some of those stories from the Zen Master. Our thanks to Dave Wannstedt for joining us today, and we've got a big show coming up next week. So as we mentioned, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything that's going on with Gimme the Hot Sauce, a brand new show every week. Stacey, time to get out of here.
Drive home safely, Chicago. Beep, beep.
Does it again. Big time players make